success and a path to prosperity, I believe that America's best days can still be ahead. And I want to lead us forward. Join me now in the Reid Revolution.
Thursday morning, I'm John Reid, the Reid Revolution. Glad to have you with us today. I was very, very curious as yesterday unfolded to kind of watch the fallout from the president's State of the Union speech. And then as a Virginian, I was watching closely to see whether Governor Spanberger's speech got any traction. What do you think? I don't think it really got much attention. There was a lot of the kind of requisite analysis. Oh, she's a rising star. But as we pointed out yesterday, I don't think the speech really hit. It was clearly written in advance. And when I talked to a few folks last night, they seemed to think that the thing was pre-taped. Do you think it was pre-taped? Or was it actually live? And what was up with the applause being kind of piped in? Was that real? Was that not real? I talked to some people in broadcasting who said that they thought seriously that somebody had decided maybe that the applause from the audience in that ancient room, it's a wooden room in the old state capitol in Williamsburg, just didn't sound right, so they added a special effect. I don't know. Is that true? It sounded like it was an added special effect. I was in radio long enough where, you have these special effects that you hit a button and suddenly you get either laughter or you get applause or, a zinger sound or something. It's kind of a broadcasting trick. They didn't do a real good job of it if that was the case, because we noticed it, right? If you're gonna add special effects, well, this isn't the time to do it, to be honest with you. And if they did it, and I don't know, I'm trying to find out. I've asked around to a couple of people who I thought might have been in Williamsburg, who might have gone down there for the event, to see what it was like. I wish that there had been a reporter, and I haven't found this reporter yet, but I would think that one of the local reporters would have said, hey, I'd like to be in the room and kind of observe this, or be in the control room to kind of watch the thing get punched nationally. I would have a hard time believing that they put the live bug, that's what they call it, the bug, at the corner. Like on this screen, it says the Reid Revolution. That's the bug for this show. So the live bug usually means live, like you're seeing it in real time. But the rules have all changed. They didn't tell us the rules have all changed, but people are not very honest anymore. I'm kind of a stickler for it. When I was at the TV station here in Richmond and in Texas, when I was a reporter, I worked with people who were 20 or 30 years older than I was at the time, who were so serious about not staging anything. This is a big deal. You can't stage anything when it comes to news. You're there to just document what happens. So seriously, if we walked in and let's say it was a silly story about the circus or something, and there were circus tickets on the table, and you couldn't really see that it said circus on the tickets, and of course you would want the audience to see the word circus so that when you edited the video together, it would say circus and you would know what you were talking about. I didn't think it was a big deal to kind of adjust the tickets on the table so that you could see the word circus. Oh, no. The guys I was working with were purists. You don't touch it. The reporter doesn't touch it. The photographer doesn't touch it, especially the photographer. They're there just to document it. So you might say, hey, I can't see what are those tickets? And then the person you're covering might change the layout and you could see the word circus. That was how intense these guys were about following, I think, kind of a noble rule that you're there to cover the news, not to make the news. You're there to show what other people are doing, not to influence it and not to direct it, not to stage it for the audience. Now, forget the fact that back in the studio, everything was fake. And, you would see the beautiful picture of the skyline with the river going by. And that was, people really thought there was a window that overlooked the river at the studio, and that was fake. I don't think people I think modern Americans are a little more sophisticated or skeptical to believe that these days. But back in the 80s and 90s, there were a lot of people, in 70s, my goodness, I think they really thought, oh my gosh, where did they build this studio that overlooks the city where you get this beautiful skyline? So there's a sophistication level for the audience where we don't believe the staging of it. We can immediately recognize the staging. That seems almost uh, kind of like a nice naivete that people would think that you had a window overlooking the city. But the consequence of the new mindset is that I I you got to question everything. The old rules that I don't know, I think were kind of universally applied don't exist anymore. And I'm a paranoid about it. I mean, I think producer Dan will tell you. I think most people who worked with me over the years will say I'm a little paranoid about. Are we misleading in the audience? Is this something that we? Is there more disclosure that's necessary here, so that we don't get caught on the back end in some sort of fabrication, whether it was true or not, just something that's distracting from the story. I'm kind of paranoid about that. That's partially working in the media, partially working in politics, and being a Republican in politics. Democrats don't have to worry about it. Like you tell me, you tell me, if this had been Glenn Youngkin giving the speech, same room in the old Capitol in Williamsburg, and it had had that weird applause that started and stopped like somebody had pushed a button. I am just telling you, because he's a Republican, and I think people are hypersensitive in the media against Republicans, and they're pick, 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 pick. Like, what's that zit on your forehead? Do you have a hickey on your neck? What's your fly is down? Your pants are tucked into your socks, so you have dementia. You're not getting rid. I mean, I think they just pick, 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 pick. You almost have to be perfect, even in the little things, because you've got a team of reporters who will go after you and pick you apart. And I don't think it's unfair for me to say that you don't have the same hyper scrutiny for Democrat candidates. Maybe somebody would argue with me about that, but I think, having lived it as a candidate and as a communications director, and as an observer of politics, I think that's a fair statement to say. Not something that the media would like, but I think it's an accurate and fair statement. So I'm really, at some point here before the end of the week, I guess I got to, work the phones tonight. I'd like to know what the deal was in Williamsburg last night, because we do have a little bit of a problem here that's looming. And this morning, if you got up and you were looking at the paper, I don't think anybody gets the print paper anymore, except people at nursing homes who haven't figured out how to cut off the subscription, sadly. And I'm a fan of the paper. Even the reporters that I don't particularly love or don't love me, I think having a daily newspaper, especially in a place that's a state capital or a national capital, is really important, because the politicians, it's important to have an informed society. And I used to wake up every morning and would immediately get the newspaper and immediately watch the morning news, because I felt like, oh, I've got to know what's going on. I've got to know what's going on. And I soon learned it's being cherry picked. What I'm learning about and what's going on is determined by the mindset of the assignment editor and the reporter and the producer of the morning news and the editor of the newspaper. Well, now they've because they lost touch with the average reader, they've lost their audience. So you don't have that common place that everyone goes, or the majority of people read the paper for one reason or another. My dad, even though he was in politics, first thing he did was pick up. I mean, he wasn't going for the first page. It was the sports page every morning. And we kept the paper going until he died, because even with dementia, he wanted to read the sports page. He might have read it 3 or 4 times, but he wanted to read the sports page. That's what he'd been doing since he was 10 years old or something. So, 70 years later, he was still reading the sports page. You just don't get that anymore. It was interesting. This morning, I'm on my phone, sitting on the bed, looking at different websites about television news, and politics, knowing that we were going to talk about this today. And I look over at Alonzo, and Alonzo's looking at ESPN. So the everything that we grew up with is changing. And I think we make an assumption, and it's one that's going to burn us here, that the old rules still apply to new media. And I want to be careful about this because, we're with this program. I don't have the same rules and regulations. I certainly don't have editors breathing down my neck about what we talk about. Producer Dan and I discuss these things before we talk about them on the broadcast, on the podcast. I hate the word podcast. I think I'm just going to change this to a broadcast and try to get a bigger audience to legitimize that word. Hey, is that deceptive? Right? Is if I put in my emails to people, it's the Reid Revolution broadcast, not podcast. Switching those words, am I deceiving people? That's an interesting thing to explore. I don't think people worry about it anymore. They just say whatever they want to say, and there's no thought about whether you're being honest or dishonest. So the reason I bring this up is I do think there was something weird about Abigail Spanberger's response. I think it was written, as these things are, before they actually hear the president's speech. I can't be but so mad about that. It wasn't really a response, as one person told me last night. Jim Herring, who some of you may be familiar with, he calls me and tells me what he's hearing around town. And I think he works the phones all day and all night talking to different people all over the country, it seems. But anyway, he said this wasn't a response. This was a message. There was no real response to Donald Trump. It wasn't like point for point dismantling or attempting to discredit what the president said. It was just a Democrat message. Good. That is a distinction, right? That is a distinction. There were some people who were really critical about Donald Trump, saying that he didn't offer any solutions. And I thought about that yesterday. I said, well, actually, he did. He did. He talked about the border, the porous border, and how he closed the border. That's a solution. You may not like it, but that's a solution. He talked about illegal immigrants and previously not enforcing the law, and illegal immigrants taking advantage of government programs and draining our limited funds when we're $39 trillion in debt. A lot of localities having problems. And his solution, whether you like it or not, is we're going to deport people who don't belong here under the law. And it's not new laws, it's old laws. He's going to enforce the law. I mean, how shocking. It must be shocking. Seriously, if you've been here for 30 years and you've never seen the law enforced, wow, that's got to be shocking. It's like if you go to the movies and they never really check the ticket. It's like, oh, we saw you at the ticket counter. We figure you bought a ticket, so we just let you walk in, and we assume you're going to go to the movie that you bought a ticket for. We don't really check the tickets. And then suddenly you get some little ticket Nazi at the door who's checking the tickets. You're like, oh, well, wait a minute. This is, of course I bought a ticket, and of course I'm going to go to the movie. Is it wrong to check the ticket? No, that's a legitimate thing to do. You're just not used to it. So it's kind of shocking to you, and you take personal offense that somehow you're being singled out, but that's not the case. Trump is doing that when it comes to immigration. For how many years have we heard about medicines being so outrageously expensive? I didn't know that was really true. I just kind of live in my world here in the United States and realized, oh my God, my Propecia to keep me from being bald is costing me a fortune, right? Until I find some sort of discount program and use the generic finasteride so that I don't go bald. I was kind of distressed. And then I would talk to people on the other side of the planet who are like, oh, we pay $1. We pay $1 for 30 pills for the month. And I'm like, what? You pay $1? These things are costing me a fortune. Viagra is something else. I don't know if you've ever used Viagra. Viagra costs a fortune until you use the generic, and these are kind of inconsequential issues, Viagra and finasteride. You're not going to live or die based on that. So I'm not trying to make light of a very serious issue. If you've got a medicine that you need to keep your blood pressure under control or to regulate some organ, you don't want it to cost you $800 a month, the equivalent of rent or mortgage. Trump heard all that. And then he created this Trump RX thing, this website. Now, I haven't been on it. So I don't know. Is it functional? Is it legitimate? Is it saving people's lives and saving a lot of money for the average person? He made the claim in the State of the Union that it was, right? With the lady who needed, I forget what it was, some sort of medicine, and she went to Trump RX, and now she's getting the medicine for a fraction of what she was paying. So he did address one of the issues that I've heard for more than 10 years, probably back to the Obama era, about how Americans are paying too much for medicine. And of course, everybody in Canada, Canada's like, oh my God, if you're a lefty, you think Canada is the place. That and Sweden. Oh God, they got it all right. We've got it all wrong. Of course, that's what they say. But Trump heard that suggestion and came up with the Trump RX thing. I mean, I'm not going to tell you that I know that it works, because I don't know if it works. But the more I heard that being repeated over and over again yesterday, that Trump didn't address any issues and didn't offer any solutions, baloney. You just don't like the solutions because they are free market solutions, and they don't address the problem in the way you want them to. If you're a leftist, you want the government involved, and you want universal health care paid for by people like me, and probably you, who get up every morning and go to work. You want us to pay for everybody else's health care. I'm sorry, I'm not interested in doing that. I don't think that makes me a bad person. I mean, I might give money to my church, and if somebody in my world has a major crisis, I might be generous enough to give money to try to help them. But no, I'm not interested, because I know about government programs and what waste is usually incorporated into them, and the fact that they generally don't actually solve the problem. I'm not a fan of that. But to say that Donald Trump didn't offer solutions, that's just not true. And there's a general sense of phoniness in the media today. It's another reason why someone told me, "Oh, John, you just you talk a lot on the show, but it's not scripted." No kidding. That's by design. One of the great things about talk radio when I was in it for 8, 9 years was that you didn't have a script written by some leftist 30-year-old in New York City. If you hate me and you watch this program and you're shaking your head like, I can't stand this guy, well, then you're not going to like me, because I'm not working from a script, and what I'm saying comes from me and my life experience and my observations, which I hope, if you actually examine my background, give me some credibility to offer an opinion, not just like some drunk loudmouth in a bar who's mouthing off and repeating what they heard from someone else. I like the idea that this isn't scripted. I like that you're never going to see my face pop up with 30 other people around the country reading the same script. You've seen that before. And that's what you get from the Associated Press. That's what you get with your local TV station and your local news, that they're repeating the same words. And you just have to have faith that what you're hearing is an accurate recounting, that the 10 stories that you get in that first 10 minutes of the newscast are actually relevant stories, and that they're fairly adjudicated. I mean, when I used to speak to college students, I would say, there are 1,000 things happening in Washington, D.C. today. There are 1,000 things happening in Richmond today. And someone sits at an assignment desk, and assuming they get an email about those things, because there are very few reporters who go out and enterprise a story. They're on the phone like, oh my God, this is happening, I better go cover it. That really doesn't happen very often anymore. They don't have the manpower to allow someone to have the full day to go seek out a story. So most of the stuff you see on the evening news is because somebody sent an email. Some communications director, like I used to be, sends an email that says, oh, we're doing a bill. We were doing 2 bills in the Congress today. One will solve the Social Security insolvency issue, and the other is about puppies drowning in the river. Guess which one they're going to cover? right? They're going to cover the one about puppies drowning in the river. So you and everybody else watches the evening news or picks up the newspaper, and in many cases, instead of seeing the story that's really the most relevant to your life, you wind up with the story that they know in the modern world will get clicks. Oh, yeah, everybody's going to click on the story about the dogs drowning in the river and how we're going to prevent that from happening. Not everybody's going to click on the Social Security one and the fact that we're $39 trillion in debt. So we just won't cover that. This is a problem. Then you have to assume that the reporter has been trained, and it is something you've got to train your mind to do. And even now that I'm no longer a journalist and I don't have the same obligations to try to be balanced, if you spent a few decades of your life with this, or attempting at least to be disciplined, to say, now, is this a legitimate story? Am I being told the truth here? Who would be against this, whatever it is I'm hearing, and what will their answer be? And how do I seek them out so that when I put my story on the news or write it up, it's balanced? I just don't think that is the um, mindset that is drilled in to modern journalists these days. And I say that, as somebody who was an adjunct professor at VCU. Now, it was a long time ago, and it wasn't a great experience, to be honest with you. But I just don't think that traditional, neutral, objective mindset is taught and required for modern journalists. I think much of this is advocacy journalists. And I feel a little guilty because on the morning show I did for a decade, we were one of the first shows in America that had a commentary segment, which I loved. I mean, I'm happy to talk about controversial issues, and it was a ratings winner. I will tell you, it made a lot of money for the station, and it made a name for me. And the people who hated me, but the people who loved the segment. But I do feel a sense of guilt that maybe I was a part of shifting. I did it in kind of a small segment, but maybe a part of shifting the entire culture towards opinion journalism rather than objective journalism. Those are two very different things. And it means, this is a long-winded, we're 22 minutes into this, excuse me, is a long-winded way of saying, I think that years ago, if you had a governor, whoever it was, Republican or Democrat, responding to the President of the United States, you wouldn't question whether it was live or not. If it said live on the screen, it was live. And if it was taped, it would say pre-taped, like this was taped an hour ago, and now we're sharing with you the pre-taped. I don't, and people would have been sticklers about it. Even the Democrats would have been sticklers about it. I don't know that, I mean, I have to second guess everything now. So I'm assuming that what I saw was actually live from the Capitol in Williamsburg. But then what was the deal with the applause? Was that real? I mean, or maybe the answer is they had one microphone next to two people, and that was amplified, and that's why you could hear it start and hear it stop. Maybe it's a simple answer like that. They had a lousy sound person, and they just didn't. It didn't sound natural because the mic was just at one. Is it a big deal? No, it's not the biggest big deal. The big deal is what Abigail Spanberger said and didn't say. But it's a weird situation for somebody like me who has been in media or around media my entire professional career, that now I've got to second guess everything. Even the things that in previous decades I probably wouldn't have second guessed. It becomes even more acute with artificial intelligence, which is where I was going to go with this when I started talking about it 20 minutes ago. AI is really messing with us here, and I'm not sure what to do about it. There's simple things. Producer Dan, you want to put up the graphic? I will always stand up for the American citizens. Now, I created this yesterday with ChatGPT because I thought the most telling moment of the president's address was when Democrats stayed seated and wouldn't stand up to say, yeah, our priority is to take care of the American citizens. So I thought this was interesting. And I told ChatGPT, if you've worked with it, some of you are probably very inexperienced, some of you know all about it. I said, put a gleaming American city on one side and a beautiful American rural landscape on the other side, and then have a collection of Americans of different races and colors and backgrounds and ages in the forefront, and say, I will always stand up for the American citizens. I will always stand up for what's right for our country, and put an American flag in it. And boom, 30 seconds later, ChatGPT gives me this that would have cost me, what, $1,000 to hire a graphic artist to do and print, and it would have taken 2 or 3 days in the past. 30 seconds, no kidding. I get this, and I put it on my Facebook page. It seemed to get some attention, and of course, it was me asserting that I will always stand up for the American citizens. I don't, Republican or Democrat, if there's something that's good for America, I'm on board with it. We can debate some of those issues, but in general, I think it's unfortunate that we are at such loggerheads that we can't agree on the common things that would be good for Americans, even if it causes pain now. But you can tell that picture that was created, that poster, that's not real people, right? You can tell that that's a graphic image. 1 or 2 words instructing ChatGPT to make it realistic, lifelike, and you wouldn't be able to tell that those people were cartoon characters. They would look like real people. So I show you that to then show you this next video, which I'm told has Abigail Spanberger and her team livid, furious. And I don't really blame them, because I can tell that it's not Abigail Spanberger. There's some things about her face and everything that aren't right, but it looks like Abigail Spanberger if you just catch it. This is the video that's going around about Governor Abigail Spanberger. What do you think of this? It's AI. I should say that. It's AI. It's artificial intelligence.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Looks like her. Kind of. Right? It looks like it's really an actress. If you don't think it's her, you think it's an actress. And this would cost you thousands of dollars to stage if you had shot it with a real camera and hired extras and had a lighting crew. I mean, this probably took 10 minutes. Probably took more time. Look, hey, this is what they really are mad about, the hates God thing with
But
Jesus
I promise
on
to make
fire.
life more affordable for Virginians, to never encroach on the Constitution, and I'll definitely never take your guns.
Right? Wake up, Virginia. I mean, I think it's a pretty potent message. And that's artificial intelligence. That's not Abigail Spanberger, but it sure looks real. And the message is a legitimate message. I mean, I do think Virginia needs to wake up. If you voted for Abigail Spanberger last time because you thought she was concerned about affordability, and then you didn't go, no, wait a minute. You talked about affordability, but now you and your party are talking about raising 50-some taxes and getting us back into a deal that's going to inevitably increase everybody's energy bill, and you're going to see it right there on the bill, and the price is going up. And do you feel deceived? You should feel deceived, right? But in fairness to Abigail Spanberger, as somebody who was a candidate, I often think, all right, now I find that amusing and I find that interesting, and I think it's a legitimate point to make. I mean, it's not really my place to say whether she hates God or not. I don't think that part bothered me a little bit. Like that, I think, kind of crosses the line. Although if you're 100% pro-abortion to the day of birth, I do have to question your moral compass. I will question that. I think that's pretty sick. But it's getting attention, and it's artificial intelligence. And I think, what if somebody did one of those with me in it? I don't know. What if they had me walking around in a Speedo bikini? I mean, you could try to humiliate and embarrass me, and would anybody know about it? Would anybody? People would laugh at it, and I would hope it would be public policy and not just personally humiliating. But would you put that past the Democrats? I wouldn't put it past them. So I think honestly, we need to pull back here and say, what are we doing with AI? How do we label it? If we're a free speech person, and I am, how do you label it as artificial intelligence so that anybody who sees it, if they agree with the message, like I thought overall that message was a legitimate message, and the Democrats should be checked on all the lies of late. What are we doing here? And how are we being honest and fair with people? You might immediately see it, know it's artificial intelligence, but a lot of the population may not be able to discern that. I've seen a lot of videos of late that I'm like, what? Is that real? Is that not real? Here you go. Here you go. And I think this is something Republicans need to be concerned about, because the Democrats do not have that moral compass and those lines that they won't cross. I think that's a fair statement. Some of the Republicans, and I know this personally, also have that mindset. But I think in general, there are more people in the Republican Party who will say, well, let's not do that. That crosses a line. We're not into lying. Most of us. And there are fewer in the Democrat Party. And then the decision, the opinion of the public is dominated by stuff like that. I'll share a couple of other things for you. Plus, the Abigail lied magnet that is flying off the shelves. I think you're going to start seeing this all over the state of Virginia. Abigail lied with her big happy face on it. How you can get one of those bumper stickers and magnets if you want to, because I do think she needs to own this. She misled everybody last year. All of the Democrats misled everybody last year, and they need to be held accountable for that. And clearly it's not going to be a traditional campaign situation. So, hey, this is where we are. But let's think through it. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. Senator Bryce Reeves is standing by to talk to us, I think, from the Capitol this morning. So we'll talk to Bryce Reeves in just a moment on the Reid Revolution. All right, welcome back. Let me tell you real quick, I'm giving away 2 free tickets to the VIP reception and speech by Jamie Franklin at the Virginia Forum. That's tomorrow night, Friday night, at the Glen Allen Cultural Arts Center in Henrico County. Now, Jamie has started a huge movement with young Christian women so that they don't go off to the left. She went to the University of California at Berkeley. UC Berkeley is what they call it in California. And she managed to survive without being lured into the leftist trap. I'm really curious what she's got to say. She will give remarks for about 40, 45 minutes, and then I'll get to interview her on stage tomorrow. If you want to be there, send me an email at thereidrevolution@gmail.com, thereidrevolution@gmail.com. And let's say the first 4 emails, I've got about 10 tickets to give away today. So the first 4 emails, I'll give you a pair of tickets to the VIP event and the seating for the forum tomorrow. And you can get your tickets if you don't win them today at thereidrevolution@gmail.com. You can go to thevirginiacouncil.org and buy those tickets. And I will look forward to seeing you in person at the Virginia Forum at the Glen Allen Cultural Arts Center tomorrow. Senator Bryce Reeves is with us now, and I think you're live at the Capitol this morning. I'm really glad
I am here.
Yeah,
I am here. Good to see you.
Hey, man, I'm glad to see you. What is it like? What is it like? You're at Crossover. You all have been down there for months. I have deliberately avoided being at the Capitol because I'm not looking to be in anybody's crosshairs. Is it just awful? Is everybody at each other's throats? What's the vibe like?
How do you know this already? Like, yes, it's exactly what it is.
Right? I know you're in it.
It's pretty miserable. I got part of the job of the minority party is to hold the majority accountable. And I've been doing that. And, I've praised the governor when she's done well. And it seems like I haven't been able to praise her in a while, John. And it's been disheartening. We can talk through kind of where we are with Spamberger, but within a matter of hours, she reversed 287G, our ability to work with our federal partners, enforcement of illegal immigration. And that was the first dance. And now she signed a bill about the gerrymandering of Virginia for, quote, fairness for one party, maybe. And yet they're going to build in there too. You got to believe that they're going to turn it back around before the next redistricting. This is just a temporary measure because they hate Trump so bad. But it's been awful. And,
to be honest with you, while we talk about the gerrymandering, does anybody believe that a new congressperson who just ran and won is going to sit there for 4 years and then throw their hands up and say, okay, we can go back to the old district now, and I may lose my... Does anybody believe that that is true? Is that reasonable to think?
No, totally unreasonable to think. And so your question was, how's it going down here? Well, I've lost a committee. I don't know if you heard about that, but
tell me what happened.
There was a New York... Yeah, so there was a New York Times called me for a quote, and this is after she's done some of the things she's done. And, I describe our governor as a CIA operative. And that's what she does. She gains your confidence, your trust, right, in order to recruit you to basically go against your own country, right? I mean, that's what CIA operatives do. They try to convince you to perform treason against your own country. And she did it using 5 different separate passports. It's really a great article for your viewers and listeners. Pull up the Washington Times article and read it, really read it, because the reporter did a great job. While it's a fluff piece for her, they really appealed to her narcissistic tendencies to get this information out because, my better half, and this reporter got to talk about it, and which makes total now how she got where she is and what she asked Washington, or not Washington, the New York Times. I just said the only difference between her and Mondami is that Mondami has the courage to admit he's a socialist at this point. And so far, she hasn't proven herself worthy to say she's a moderate. So she's anything but that. And if you look at the bills that are going to be put on her desk, I actually told her at one of these dinners we had one of these nights for one of the organizations here that, there's no more hiding in Congress. You're going to have to either sign the bills, amend the bills,
right,
or veto them. And they're coming on your desk. You can't hide in Congress anymore. So we'll find out what kind of governor she's going to be. We've got gun laws we've got to deal with. There's an illegal taking of that's in violation of the Constitution, in my opinion. And my colleagues that are constitutional lawyers believe that as well. I never expected it to be this bad. It's really bad. We're in the final throes of it. We've cranked out the Senate budget. It's different than the House budget. The Senate budget, the 5 Republicans on the Senate Budget Committee, we've worked with Senator Lucas. I think there's only one tax increase in the Senate budget right now that we can actually identify, which is I think it's 10 or 11% on guns and ammo. But other than that, all those other stupid 50 some odd taxes, I think we've avoided putting that in the Senate budget. Myself and 3 of my colleagues were in my office yesterday morning, plowing through, flagging, trying to read the fine print, and going through it with a fine tooth comb. And it's kind of funny. You look at my book and it's just nothing but pull tabs. And it's,
so they're going to go along with the exclusion of the tax increases. They seem to be all in on it as soon as they arrived at the Capitol in January.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the members in the House are so new that they're putting an enormous amount of pressure on the speaker. And I think the speaker is putting pressure on the governor. I don't know that she's actually leading more than she's just listening and doing what Louise Lucas and the Senate caucus on their side, Democrat caucus. And I don't know. I wish I had an answer for your listeners and your viewers that we're in that process. We're grinding it through, and we're going to know pretty much where we're going to land. my gut tells me that the House is not going to let that ride, but we won't know that till it comes out of that joint committee of conference, and we don't even know who the conferees are going to be at this point. I would assume McDougal and Pillion from our chamber would once again be that, but there's no telling because when I called Spanberger a socialist, we had a new member that took over for Senator Eben as he went into the administration. When they do that, they put out the committee sheets again, and you would think that the new member would just take up where Adam left. Not the case. They took Commerce and Labor from me. And unfortunately, I had two of my colleagues vote with the Democrats against me, thus saying basically we approve of you getting your committee stolen from you. And you've been around long enough. That's a very powerful committee. It helps my district. There's a lot of things that happen in there that affect Virginia as a whole. Yeah, we pay extra caucus dues to be part of that committee, but I've got a few more. So if she wants to grab the rest of them, she can make me have no committees, and I'll have all day to sit and talk with you about politics.
Yeah, well, there is something to be said for, hey, we don't have any real power at the moment, so go ahead and abuse me publicly as much as you want to, because I'm going to make sure people know about it. And the average person who sends everyone to the Capitol, hypothetically, to look out for them, is not going to like that attitude. And I get the impression there's a lot of that going on. It has been that way even when Youngkin was there. The governor, I don't know, to his credit or, as testament to maybe his naivete, he tried to play nice. I mean, remember, he went to Louise Lucas's birthday party and he sent her a little vest that said Youngkin for governor. I mean, he did the things that a decent person would do to say, hey, we don't have to be enemies. Kind of like when I walked up to Abigail Spanberger, remember,
Absolutely.
shook hands with her and said,
I do.
Can we be friends? Let's not. That wasn't a PR stunt. That was a
For
real
real.
effort. Let's bring
Well, that was who you are.
down.
Yeah.
And boy, they didn't like it. They don't like getting called on that
No.
stuff. So they're going after you that way. Tell me, you were a state trooper, right? At one point?
No, a Prince William County police officer and an undercover narcotics
Gotcha.
detective.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew you were in law enforcement. What is your take on the practical reality of what has happened in Virginia now that the governor started out saying we're not going to cooperate with ICE? She says that this makes Virginians safer because it frees up local law enforcement to do the things they need to do and not be distracted by enforcing federal law and getting criminals off the streets. What's your assessment of this? Honestly,
Look, John, you and I talked over your campaign what Virginians want, and it's that same. They want their lives made easier, better, and safer. We are not making Virginians' lives easier. Certainly not making it better by adding all these taxes if they come through, and it's certainly not safer by severing that tie with our federal partners. She's doing two things. She's purposely what I call poking the bear, right? You have TDS so bad, Trump derangement syndrome so bad that you have to show that you are fighting against Trump and his regime, so to speak, because she's the diamond darling of the Democrat Party now. I call her Hillary 2.0. And the reason I call her that, truthfully, is she's just like Hillary. She'll tell you everything you want to hear and deliver nothing and do exactly the opposite. And she'll smile while stabbing you in the back. And listen, if she changes direction and she actually governs from center left, I would be so happy for Virginians because that's what we need. The state isn't screwed up. Youngkin left us in a very good position. I had Democrat colleagues tell me that. Mm-hmm. Mark my words. We were fourth, I think, the last calling of CNBC. We were once at one time, and now we're fourth. If all these things go through that they put into the budget and bills go through, we will be ranked right there with Maryland in the 30s and 40s. And that's not making our lives easier, better, or safer. And so your question was about the law enforcement aspect of it. I will tell you, in talking with troopers and local law enforcement, I had a great conversation with one of my sheriffs last night in my jurisdiction. One of my counties in my jurisdiction has the highest population of, probably, I would say, one of the higher populations besides Prince William in the state that has illegal immigrants.
Right.
They have been quietly enforcing. You don't hear about it because they don't rant and rave about it. But um, if he told me that if they continue to enforce 287G, that she's going to go back to the comp board and start wiping out sheriff's departments' monies. So she means to play ball. She's supportive of these illegal immigrants here, and I don't think that makes us safer.
Yeah. Well, it's a very real issue, and I think Vicki Manning, who you probably know with Restoration News, who is a
Absolutely.
Republican, she's doing a great job every day of documenting the real criminal aliens who are in our midst. And it's not a made up story. I know they always try to say, oh, you're just exaggerating. One bad guy, 1,000 good guys. How do you do this? Well, it's not one bad guy. It's a lot of people. And I've been telling folks, look at what's happened in Mexico in the last week with the cartels setting things on fire and holding Mexican tourist towns hostage. That's what we're trying to prevent from happening here. Those are the people that are coming to the United States and selling drugs and actively organizing criminal syndicates in our midst. And Donald Trump, I mean, it could get him killed as a person. I hate to say this. He's the only guy who seems to be bold enough and brave enough to stand up and try to stop it before it overtakes us. I think that's important. And I would think that, Miss Postal Inspector, Miss CIA operative would recognize that's a real threat to stability for her and her party and for all of us in Virginia, would take that seriously. It doesn't seem like anybody's getting that message at the Capitol.
No, and they aren't. And you heard it through President Trump's speech in the State of the Union. None of the Democrats stood up when he said, hey, we need to stop this. And it's already happened. If you remember Aurora, Colorado, where they had the Tren de Agua or whatever it is from Venezuela took over that whole community. I've seen it working as a police officer before, arresting MS-13 gang members. I actually, Tom Homan is sending me a list. I'll get it to you of some of the high profile arrests and kind of some data for you. He actually texted me just the other day from my official email to get me some numbers. I had asked him for the numbers so I could actually, not make things up and be able to prove them. So I'll get those to you as soon as I can, and come on, we can share those. But the reality is they're here, they're pushing fentanyl, it's coming up, all these things have happened, and these people play for keeps. I mean, it wasn't too long ago we were reading about the poor kid that got chopped into pieces up in Northern Virginia, and they caught those MS-13 gang members. And look, I've worked them. They're scary as hell. And if they're still here in our state, that's not making us safer. These people just, they don't play. Like, they'll cap you, they'll chop you up, they'll throw you to the wolves, they'll do whatever because they don't have a moral compass. And their moral compass is greed and hierarchy and moving up the food chain with regard to illicit drug trade. And so, yeah, she's not doing us any favors. I'm not trying to make people afraid, but I think they need to be aware of what's happening now. And they're really going to notice a lot of these things as these bills come through. And there's not a lot of grandfathers on some of these bills. I mean, if some of these bills come through, I'll be an outlaw pretty soon. And I'm not afraid to say it, but and in talking with my constitutional sheriff,
carrying weapons.
You bet.
Yeah.
And they come from, these are standard issued law enforcement weapons, and even off-duty sheriffs there's no clause for off-duty sheriff to carry it, or a police officer. I mean, what happens in gun-free zones is if I'm a bad guy, I'm going to take a gun to a gun-free zone because nobody's going to shoot me.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's all for show. It's all window dressing. I think Abigail has her sights set on running for president, and she's trying to really be the diamond darling of the party right now rather than govern. And I think that's been her intent all along. If you remember, she was recorded in her caucus call of saying, never say, we're not going to say some of those terms about don't defund the police and all those other things. If you remember, those calls are out there. Somebody recorded her, and socialism. She's like, never say that word again, never. Not that she doesn't agree with it. She just says if we allow it, if we say it, they're going to hang it on us.
Yeah.
And so, she's smart. She's not stupid.
Somebody really does. Producer Dan brought this up yesterday when we were wrapping up the show. Someone should ask her directly during one of the press conferences. I guess, I don't know if I've got my journalist pass back. I should reapply to be a member of the Capitol
Absolutely.
Press Corps and show up and ask her, will you commit to not running for vice president or president next year? You just accused President Trump of trying to exploit the office for his own self-interest, that he's a petty person, that I don't know how you make the argument that a billionaire who's got resorts around the world is selfish if he's putting up with what he's putting up as president. But will you commit not to run for vice president or president and complete the 1 4-year term that you just won? And I bet you she wouldn't make that commitment.
No way. Well, actually, she'll make the commitment. She'll
And
just
then
lie
just
to
break
you
it.
to your
Yeah,
face.
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, no, you're thinking, yeah, I think she'll say, absolutely, I'm staying the whole time. And then when they make the offer, it'll be like,
Well,
well,
things have changed. Who can turn that down?
right.
Hey,
Conditions
before we
have
run out of
changed.
time, let me ask you, you had been, I think many people considered the leading candidate for the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate. And then you had a
Right.
family issue that made you make the decision. I'm sure it was difficult not to run for that nomination. Now you've got a number of people who are out there looking for it. Have you endorsed? How do you handicap that race? They'll be going up, we presume, against the incumbent Mark Warner, who isn't looking real healthy. I mean, not to be rude about it, but I saw a lot of videos with him yesterday. I mean, he's an older man. I don't mean to be ugly about it, but he doesn't look that great. What
No,
are you thinking about this race?
Well, I think Mark is very vulnerable. I wouldn't have run unless I thought I could win, and you know that. And I've run statewide before, and I know how hard you worked. We talked. I did like 154,000 miles in 15 months, and you were on that same track.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. That being said, I'm not afraid to admit it. I lost one marriage because of politics, and I don't plan to lose another. And my better half's mother is stricken with cancer. We found out at Christmas time, and she asked me not to run. And I've got to do. John, you know me better than a lot of folks. I run a very simple code: honor God, love my family, and protect this country. And I can't do the last two unless I honor my commitment. And so, that was a hard decision. We were raring to go. I think we would have. I think we would have given him a hell of a run. I think based on what I see and what you see, I think he's vulnerable, extremely vulnerable. I don't even know why he still does his little takes on Facebook, because I haven't found one positive thing anybody says about him. And I agree. He doesn't look healthy. And somebody needs to ask him why he's running when he's a multi-millionaire, $300 something million.
The second richest member of the U.S. Senate. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I guess they could say that for Trump, but Trump has explained why he's run. Mark hasn't explained why he's running. And all he does is talk about Trump. He hasn't carried a piece of legislation or done anything for Virginia lately. So, I think we have a good opportunity, especially based on what's happened in the General Assembly this year. I think people are going to wake up really fast. But I have lent my weight behind Major General Burt. I think the general is fantastic. I've had a lot of chance to speak with him, and I think he's been a candidate before, so he kind of understands what's happening. He's not a first-time candidate. I think he brings the global perspective of national security based on his rank and what he's done in the military. He has a law degree as well, which is beneficial. I think he'd be a great U.S. Senator, quite frankly. And I'm glad he's.
Yeah, Burt Miyazawa and I do remember the last time that he was in the mix, and I'm not knocking him at all, but this effort to get the 10,000 signatures, I underestimated how tough that would
That's
be,
tough.
really.
Yeah.
And it costs a fortune. People aren't going to go stay in hotels, and you got to pay for their food if they're going to go out and get these signatures. And it's not like getting likes on Facebook. Oh, click like and it's cool.
Right.
You're asking for their
Right.
name and their
It's a
address.
grind.
I really underestimated it. I'm embarrassed to say that, but I think that's important to know. You think he's on track to get these 10,000 signatures, and the others I hear are
I
having some
do. And
trouble. Yeah.
yeah, I do. And I know a lot of his base, a lot of my supporters are helping him with that grassroots activity.
Mhm.
You've been in my district,
Yeah.
came to one of our events, and you've seen we just have some just God fearing, loving, just solid Virginian Americans, right? And they believe in the cause and they believe in the person. They're going to go out and do some sweat
Yeah.
equity. But I also think he's raising the money that he's going to need to have that additional support element. As you know, getting out to get those final numbers. I remember a few years ago somebody tried to lower it to 5,000, and that was after I had run statewide. And I thought that might be better, but I'll tell you what, you really know if you got a good candidate if they can get those 10,000 signatures, because that tells you, one, they have a following, two, they can raise money, because you're not going to win unless you can raise money and convince people to give you their treasure. And you may be the best public speaker, blah, 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 blah. But if you don't have money to compete, um, you're not going to win. And
Yeah.
it's just the nature of the beast. You got to do both very, very well.
And you got to be organized all across the state of Virginia, not just in
Correct.
your hometown. Yeah. I got to go, but let me ask you your prediction on the redistricting, gerrymandering stuff that the Democrats are trying to jam down everybody's throats. How do you think this goes? Do we have a vote here? And how does it end, do you think?
Well, I think based on the second injunction, my colleagues were texting on our text chain today, finding out if the Supreme Court is going to go ahead and take this second ruling up, and have they scheduled that date yet? So I think right
They
now we
haven't
have a
yet,
stay
right?
of no, they have not yet.
Right.
But I think based on the second ruling with the injunction, I think we have a stay of execution. Now, however, the Democrats aren't thinking that way at all. They're going to go forward regardless of the rule of law. They'll probably get Jay Jones to write something up in his opinion that we can move forward. And, I often ask this, and this might be a question for people that are watching, if there's a constitutional attorney out there. My question has always been, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat or President Trump or President Obama or whoever, there's only one time in history that I know of that a president didn't follow a Supreme Court ruling, and that was Nixon. Um, but other than that, who enforces the rule of law? Let's say a judge's rule came down and he's saying you got to stop, and the governor says we're not stopping. Who stops it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so what I've understood is part of it. Senator Stanley, who's my seatmate, who's a hell of an attorney, said the judge can issue uh, uh, civil charges against a registrar, and also criminal charges based on the state code for violating a judge's order. So that would attack that individual personally. But when you have a whole big, like the governor, who's going to come in there and tell the governor how to run it and to comply? I don't
Apparently,
know, and I'd be
one
curious.
judge that nobody's ever heard of is the only person who's got the guts to stand up and say you got to obey your own rules and your own laws. I'm shocked. Look, I know the Democrats want to win, and I don't really blame them for that. I think they're going about it in a bad way. But everybody should say, what does the law say? What do the rules say in print? Not my opinion, not your opinion. What is
Right.
written down? What did we all agree to? And you're going to follow it to the letter. And if you don't, then you'll just have to do this in 2 more years. If it's still potent
Right.
for you. I don't understand why that's such a difficult concept for obeying the rules and the law. This is how bad we are in a society right now, where that seems to be debatable. Which laws do we obey? Which rules do we obey? It's crazy.
I agree. You and I
Yeah.
agree. We're both the guys who revered Reagan for who he was, and we could sure use a little bit more of that
Yeah.
in his time. Where the Democrats aren't my enemy; they're just my opposition. I don't, and now it seems like they're trying to make it as that,
Yeah.
which really bothers me being in office because I don't look at my colleagues like the enemy. But there's some days that I just like, what planet are you from? And
Yeah. Well,
it's
everybody has
hard.
to
That's something
want
I need
to
to.
hold that line, and it seems like it seems like they don't want to hold that line. Senator Bryce Reeves,
Right.
I appreciate the chance to talk to you. I hope I'll see you in person real soon. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hey, let me know if you need me to check on your credentials down here. Or you need me to do some
I will.
homework. I'll put my
You know
staff on
what?
it.
I'm going to add that to my to-do list. I should join the
Okay.
Capital Correspondence Group again now that I'm back in this role.
Well, please come down before we end
Okay.
session because there's a bunch of your supporters from our caucus that love you to death, and we'd love to see you down here. Thank you for standing for liberty and starting this Reid revolution, so to speak, and not quitting, not giving up on Virginia, not giving up on all those people you met that shook your hand and looked you in the face, said they were voting for you. You didn't have to win office to be a change maker, and you're doing it. And from my heart, I want to thank you, John, for doing the right thing, and it means a lot to me personally.
Well, you're very kind to say it. I will keep on fighting. This is my home state, and I'm not giving up on it. Senator, thank you very much.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. We're going to take a quick break. We come back, and let's talk about economic issues and whether we're just getting rolled all over the country by Democrats who are exploiting the American economy for their own benefit while leaving you in a mess. Tim Sandifer with the Goldwater Institute is our next guest on the Reid Revolution. All right, back on the Reid Revolution on this Thursday. I'm John Reid, and Tim Sandifer is with us, the Vice President of Litigation at the Goldwater Institute. I'm sorry to leave you sitting there for a couple of minutes, Tim, but I appreciate you hanging with us here. We're in the middle of a tug of war in Virginia over tax increases, over hyper-regulation, my word, hyper-regulation of business in the Commonwealth that I think is going to really do damage. What are you all tracking that is most concerning for you on a federal level and in the states across the country?
Oh, how much time do you have?
A little bit, yeah.
But you know what, you mentioned the problems, the burdens that we put on the hardworking wealth creators in the states. And it's not just taxes and restrictions, it's also whether people have the ability to defend themselves in court when the government treats them wrongly, when the government takes away their right to economic freedom or private property rights and so forth.
Right.
And there's a case now pending in front of the Arizona Supreme Court that really holds the potential to be a real game changer as far as that's concerned. So what happens is, under today's law, for the most part, if the government decides to take away your freedom of speech or freedom of religion in some way, or does something that infringes on those rights, you can go to court, and the courts are typically very protective of those rights. The judges are going to try and do their best to defend you and your freedom against government intervention. But when it comes to private property rights or your right to earn a living, the courts tend to look the other way and treat those rights as being less important than other constitutional rights. And fortunately, the Arizona Supreme Court is going to hear a case in a few days on the question of whether that's right, or whether instead the right to economic freedom ought to be treated with the same degree of respect as freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to vote, and so forth.
And what's the nexus of this particular case that's arisen in Arizona?
Well, this case involves a man named Greg Mills. He's an engineer, an electronics engineer. He's got decades of experience in helping to design things like electronic circuits to go into computers and things that I don't pretend to understand.
Okay.
And he's got, like I said, he's got many years of experience doing this, but he wanted to start a business as a consultant to help companies to design better electronic devices. And the bureaucrats of Arizona say, no, he's not allowed to do that unless he first gets a government license as an engineer. And the problem with that is that when you look at the Arizona laws for engineering licenses, they are about structural engineers, people who are building like bridges and buildings and things, not electronics engineers. And nevertheless, the Arizona bureaucrats have said, you have to come to us and get our government permission before you're allowed to earn a living. So he sued over this and said, this is unreasonable. It makes no sense. And this case has now been pending in the Arizona courts for the better part of a decade. And finally, the Arizona Supreme Court has said that they're going to hear his case in March and decide whether or not his right to earn a living deserves that high degree of protection that I mentioned.
Isn't there a legislative solution? You know, this is a little different. I'm just going to take 30 seconds to tell you. The lady who cuts my hair, super nice lady. I've known her for 10 years. Really nice. I don't know if she's a Republican or not, but she treats me great. She told me the other day that she uses a straight razor on some of the men who come in to the salon, to the haircut place. And there is a new regulation in Virginia that would strip her of her ability to use a straight razor on men. That seemed like what in the why are we micromanaging hair salons about a straight razor? But apparently they're going to, and they are worried that that will cost them when they have to tell the client it's illegal for us to use a straight razor on you, that they'll go somewhere else. And I told her, I said, well, I would call the state senator, who's a Democrat, unfortunately, and the state delegate, who's a Democrat in your district. Tell them how many people you employ, how much money you make in taxes, and how many people you talk to in this salon on a regular basis. Hint, hint, you don't want us trashing you. And see if you can get them to fix this regulation before it changes. But it struck me like, wow, if the government is in there micromanaging that kind of stuff, and these people could really lose, what, 20, 30% or more of their clientele based on this one little thing. I mean, that's a very burdensome government regulatory structure that's put in place, and it's going to cost them a fortune to fix it. Is there a parallel there with that story, you think?
Oh, sure. And it is true. By the way, have you ever been shaved with a straight razor?
I'm trying to think. Maybe when I was in the Middle East.
I was once when I was in Virginia. I was in a town called Orange, Virginia, and I went in to get a haircut, and the barber whips out the straight razor and he starts shaving. And it was very startling, and it was awesome. It was the smoothest shave I've ever had in my. It was amazing.
Sit real still.
Right, exactly. Now, see, in that situation, for example, now that makes sense that the government would regulate for safety, because you could hurt a person with a razor, and so sure, it makes sense that you would want to make sure that a person knows what they're doing. The problem is that licensing laws very often don't have to do with making sure that the public is safe. For example, my favorite example, until very recently in Louisiana, if you wanted to be a florist, you had to get a government license to practice the trade of floristry. And to get a government florist license, you had to take a test where you were graded on the beauty of your floral designs.
No,
I mean, how subjective and stupid.
That's not true.
Yeah, and fortunately that got repealed just a few years ago. But this is an example of how licensing laws might start out to protect the public, but what very often happens is they get perverted and used by existing companies to prevent legitimate competition against themselves. Right. And they pretend that they're protecting the public when they're not really. Now, you mentioned, is there a legislative solution? Of course, the legislature could eliminate these unnecessary licensing laws. But the deeper question is, why should we have to ask elected officials in the state legislature to please respect our right to earn a living? After all, we don't have to ask them to please respect our religious freedom or our freedom of speech, because those are constitutionally guaranteed. And so the importance of this case is it's going to say, the right to earn a living is as fundamental a freedom as your right to pray or to speak and so forth. After all, the right to earn a living without unreasonable interference from others is really what we refer to as the American dream, or the right to pursue happiness.
Now, let me just do a counter argument and just see what you say. You're talking about engineers and the different types of engineers that are out there. I've seen a couple of videos of late in other parts of the world where basically people buy these things. Everybody's Trump wasn't lying when he said the other night that in parts of the world it's all about graft and corruption. And I have
Right.
worked in countries where you had to buy access. Like, I give
Of
you
course.
$50,000 and I get my certificate, and now I'm good to go because I bought off the right person. That's not a good situation to be in. And then you get bridges that collapse, or you get homes that are built in a shoddy way where it doesn't make any sense because the person really hasn't been educated correctly. Now, I
Right.
hear you drawing a distinction between the type of work, but that's a legitimate reason to regulate, isn't it?
Well,
Public
it's
safety
definitely
and
true that we need some kind of certification and testing requirements in order to ensure that people know what they're doing. There's no doubt that that is a very important thing. The question is whether the government should be doing that or whether that's better left to other entities to provide that service. That service is just like any other service. It's worth time and money, and there's no reason why that could not be provided on the free market. And in fact, you and I tend to much more often rely on free market certification or free market, you could call it licensing, than we do on government licensing. When we buy products or service, we check out the ratings on ratings forums like Amazon provides a rating. You read about whether people think it's a good thing or not before you buy it, right? But that's just a privatized version of a government pre-approval system, and it's a way of allowing people to know better what it is that they're buying. And in practical reality, already today, we overwhelmingly rely on private certification or private pre-approval processes more than we do for the government. I mean, when we go to a restaurant, how often do you go into a restaurant and say, may I please see your county health certificate, please? Or stop and read it in the window if it's taped there? Virtually never. What you do is you rely on friends or on restaurant reviews or on a book that you buy that says what good restaurant to use. So, in fact, licensing really doesn't have to be provided by the government. But if it is, then it has to respect constitutional limitations, like it has to actually be related to what the person is doing, which is not the case in Mr. Mills' case.
and have some objectivity. When I lived in
Yeah.
Manhattan, I did find it interesting that someone, I forget, I think it would be an A rating at a restaurant, and they made them tape it in the window. Like, this
Right.
restaurant's got an A health rating. And then there were other ones where it was a D, and you thought, oh my God, what does that mean? And I kind of trusted that that was objective. But then remember what they did to Donald Trump down at Mar-a-Lago. They sent inspectors in, and I don't know. I wasn't in the kitchen at Mar-a-Lago, but I've been to a lot of Trump properties, and one thing I have said without any prompting, and this isn't sucking up to anybody, we have the Trump Winery here in Virginia, in Charlottesville. Every one of them I go to, it's spick and span, not one thing out. I think they really are like hyper about cleanliness, and every flower has to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect. It's a weird obsession, my observation. And I'm thinking that's Chicago, that's LA, that's Vegas, that's Mar-a-Lago, that's the old Trump Hotel in Washington before it came a Waldorf Astoria, the Trump Winery. And then they gave him or his kitchen a really bad rating at Mar-a-Lago. And I thought, come on, I don't think that. It seems like this is another one of these mobilizing the bureaucracy of government to go after people who are unpopular. And we've got to be concerned about that too.
Well, there's no question that the more government requires you to get its permission, the more opportunities there are for the government to demand things from you, or for corrupt government officials to demand, as you said, a little backsheesh in order to get your license or something like that. And the more opportunities there are for government officials, if they don't like you, to kind of put a thumb on the scales. That as government power increases, its ability to control you and demand things from you increases. And so it's a really bad thing that so much of our lives today requires some form of government permission, whether it's building a house or purchasing a firearm or starting a business, or in some cases, even exercising your freedom of speech about politics requires some form of government pre-approval. And that is a very dangerous thing. And that is not a conservative or liberal thing. That is, whenever the government has a power to deny you the opportunity to do something, that power becomes worth a lot of money, and people are going to scramble to gain control over that power.
Yeah. Look at the FCC right now.
Yes.
Boy, the people who
perfect
love
example.
the FCC are mad as hell that a Trump guy is questioning some of the things that are being broadcast under the existing licenses.
The more the government has the power to shut down people's free speech, the more those in power, including the current administration, are going to exercise that power to censor free speech, which is the threat that we've heard from DC in the past several weeks.
Yeah. What do you think the trend is across the country with taxation and regulatory fees and the like? In Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, to his credit, held the line and didn't allow that to get out of control. That's my observation. But the new leadership, total Democrat, social justice warrior mindset, and they seem really determined to jack up the prices, even as they talk about affordability in Virginia, at least.
Yeah. Well, of course, it differs a lot from state to state. And what we're talking about, these licensing restrictions and things, they are usually at the state level, right? A lot of politics, we talk about federal issues and Congress and things, but licensing laws and restrictions, these things have a lot more effect on your day-to-day life, usually. And those are done at the state level. So it's really important. That's why this Arizona case that I mentioned is so significant, because it can protect the freedom of economic opportunity under the state constitution. And that means that it doesn't really matter what the feds say or do, is protected at the state level. And that's why people need to be very conscious of their state constitutional rights. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, there are some states that they exist. It's like their purpose of existence is to suck as much out of the wealth creators as possible and blame them for everything. But on the other hand, there are other states that I think are much more willing to protect the rights of business owners and entrepreneurs. And I'm glad to say Arizona is one of those. We've passed a lot of limitations on regulatory restrictions that have, I think, really shown a lot of benefit by improving the economy of Arizona.
Timothy Sandifer with the Goldwater Institute. If we want to read more about what you're working on, this case in particular and some of the other issues, where can we go to?
If you'll go to our website at goldwaterinstitute.org, we've got a blog there that follows our day-to-day work in courtrooms and legislatures all across the country to defend freedom and private property and economic liberty.
I'm glad to meet you. Glad to talk to you. Let's stay in touch.
Thank you.
Goldwaterinstitute.org. Timothy, thank you very much. You know, I'm kind of waiting. Producer Dan needs to weigh in on this at some point. I'm kind of waiting to find out that they're going to regulate not just the internet, but podcasts, right? I mean, look at me. I mean, I grew up as a professional in this business and thought, do I want to go back and work for a big company, owned by maybe somebody that I don't particularly care for? You know, my old company's owned by a big left-wing liberal who's put together a bunch of investors, but I really didn't feel like that was where I wanted to be. And during my campaign for lieutenant governor, I kept talking to these podcasters who seemed to be pulling in huge money. They had total freedom. They could orchestrate the show any way they wanted to, talk about anything that they wanted to talk about. I mean, my mother still gets mad at me when I say HE double hockey sticks. She's a purist, no foul language of any kind. And I'm like, Mom, people talk this way. I don't use the F word, certainly not in public. But all those things would have been regulated at an FCC station. And so honestly, when you watch this program and I start saying whatever it is I'm saying, whether it's HE double hockey sticks for emphasis or whatever, you're hearing me without any worry about the government pulling our license or fining us, because that's kind of it's not the wild west, but it's a free forum, and I think that's probably beneficial. Now the downside to it is I will make this assertion, like all of the porn sites where your 16-year-old daughter could say, oh, I'm going to go up and study for my biology test tomorrow. And then you find out when she closed the door, she's got an OnlyFans site and she's, doing live sex shows on the internet. And you wondered where that $5,000 a month is coming from. It's coming from her. I don't know that's what these people make. But, the fact that there is no regulation, it cuts both ways. And we've got to figure out how to navigate this. What a remarkable invention Al Gore came up with, the internet, not really, but what a remarkable resource and tool this is. And yet, at the same time, if it's not used by people who have some sort of moral grounding and some sort of ethics, I really think it can destroy us as a culture and a society. The worst ideas take off and spread like that. And I would like to make the counter argument that good ideas and people who would normally be ostracized or silenced or subjugated, they get an opportunity to speak and to articulate their position. But I'm wondering, snapshot today in 2026, what do you think of the balancing act here? What do you think? A lot of the people who are influencers in both the conservative movement and the leftist movement are crazy people. I mean, nutcase crazy people who are really articulate, and they can convince. They could sell ice to Eskimos. I mean, they really are slick. But I mean, I would watch somebody for a long time. There've been several people that I have followed on Instagram and on TikTok and on Facebook and on X, which I use the least. And after I've watched them for a month or two, I'm like, oh my God, this person's nuts. I thought they were really smart, but they're really crazy, and they seem to be off, just on another planet. And then I calculate in that this is all about clicks. It's all about eyeballs and clicks. Making money is the name of the game, and that's what people are focused on. And producer Dan and I have talked about this. I really am not ready to sell my soul to just get clicks and likes and say outrageous things that will certainly get you attention, and in the short term bring in money, but then you lose your soul and you lose your reputation for what it's worth. I don't know. In 10 years, if I'm still poor, maybe you'll say, "Boy, you were stupid. You should have gone for broke like the rest of these guys." I just don't want to do that. I don't know. This will be a live experiment right in your face as to whether attempting to be thoughtful and reasonable and responsible works or not in the modern era. I mean, I pray it does. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back for segment 4 here. Producer Dan will join us. I've got a video that, this is kind of provocative. This will make some people mad. And it probably is, the Disney people are probably filing lawsuits all over the place, so I want to be careful about it. But it takes the look of Disney animation and tells the story of the oppression of society by radical Islamists. And I think it's resonating with people. It's a little provocative, but is it provocative and untrue, or provocative and true? That's the question. We'll talk about it with producer Dan when we return in just a moment on this Thursday edition of the Reid Revolution. Back here on this Thursday morning, the Reid Revolution. I am told that Hillary Clinton is getting ready to testify in Chappaqua, New York, about her, what's the right word? Engagements. Involvement with, not relationship. Is that, well, friendship, business relationship, political relationship with Epstein. God, I mean, can you believe this guy? He's dead, and everyone's talking about it, and yet I feel like I know less about what actually happened here than ever before. Is that unfair to say?
No, I don't think it's unfair at all. I mean, are the photos real of Ghislaine Maxwell at Chelsea's wedding from a few years ago?
Good question. I think they are. I think they are.
I think a prominent member of our broadcast family, I'll say broadcast family now instead of podcast family based on earlier in the show, but a prominent member of our broadcast family has posted photos of Ghislaine Maxwell at Chelsea Clinton's wedding, and I'm as theme of the show with AI and everything else. I guess these are real. I guess these are real photos. I don't, it stinks to have to guess about this stuff now and to second guess about this stuff. Is this
the only thing you can do? And we ran into this before we went on the air, producer Dan, is go back to. I mean, I guess everything's digital now, but you can go back to the archives and try to find a New York Times social
something to that
the
effect,
swirl of New York, and see who showed up. And if the picture is there at that time, maybe that's believable. Although with digital stuff, who knows what's true and what's not true. It wouldn't. It's not like we're making up the relationship between Epstein and the Clintons. I mean, that is real. It's just what was the nature of it. I've been around some people who, I knew them. I had dinner with them. I went for drinks with them. And then, one person in particular that nobody would know, who's in jail right now, prison right now, who was snorting coke in the bathroom at these places in D.C., had a good job. I didn't know it, but when someone said, "Did you hear they got arrested for dealing drugs?" I was like, well, actually, I can believe that. And, I think it's all true. So am I a bad guy for knowing that person? I would be honest about it. I would say, yeah, I knew them. I went to dinner with them. They were really entertaining. I just didn't know that they were dealing drugs on the side. That's and having lived that kind of life where I'm around a lot of different types of people, I want to be careful and be fair and honest in evaluating others, because I would hope you would be fair and honest in evaluating me. Nobody wants to do that these days.
One of our viewers is even questioning whether Jeffrey Epstein is even dead. I don't know what to tell you. I don't. You
can't believe anything anybody tells you.
Up is down, down is up, right is wrong, wrong is right. It is. I didn't like being in law school 20 some years ago. I can't even imagine being in law school now with the prospect of all of this on the table as far as evidence is concerned. It's just.
Well, it really does come down to
chaos.
Are we educating the population, or your children? If anybody's watching this program and they have kids, ask yourself, are my children trustworthy and honest? Are they? Am I trustworthy and honest? That's the question you've got to ask yourself. Do you cut corners? Do you lie? I'm not talking about a social white lie like, oh, your daughter's so beautiful, and the daughter's not beautiful. Okay, that's a different situation. But
I walked the hallways of J.R. Tucker High School.
Well, hey, you know what? Show that real quick. This is kind of petty, but it is interesting. And producer Dan made a big deal out of this.
I did.
When Abigail Spanberger ran an ad. You went to Tucker, or
I went to Godwin.
You went to Godwin, but how did you know that Tucker didn't have hallways when she was there? How did you know that?
Because I ran. I knew Tucker. I knew Freeman. I knew Hermitage. I knew the area high schools. I was a cross country runner. I ran meets at Tucker, and I think Tucker's
the building.
Yeah,
so
it was in fact.
Here's Abigail Spanberger when she was running, and is this just an ad? She's walking through the halls of her old high school, and she's talking about how it's great to be back in the old high school, when in fact, I think this is an accurate statement. Put it back up.
I was going to put up, this is what it actually looked like when she was there. Yeah.
So there weren't halls.
No, it was walkways. Yeah, it was.
Is that just artistic license? Which, who gives a damn if it's artistic license, or is that deliberately deceptive? Some people freaked out about it. I remember they felt like it was maybe symbolic of the lies that she would tell during the campaign and as governor. It didn't really bother me the way it did you, Dan, but when you got to watch yourself. Once you start lying about things, where does it stop?
Right.
Little lies turn into big lies, and where does it stop?
Show
her face walking through the old one.
Yeah. Let me do that. The thing about it to me that was so frustrating, it was a needless lie. Like, why lie about this? Why? What is the why would you not be honest about where you went to school or what the school looked like when you went there? I mean, just acting as though,
I'm back at
the
Tucker
school.
High
Oh, I
School.
recognize. Oh my gosh, I'm back. And it's
I'm
like,
so
no, you
glad to
never,
be
you
back.
never were in this building. This building didn't exist. Why would you? Why even go to the trouble of lying about this?
Well, that's a good point. Everybody's probably known people in their life who, I mean, I remember one person I worked with where, you always got to watch this when you show up at a new place and people start telling, oh, watch out for this person, watch out for this person. But they said, if they get the opportunity to tell the truth or tell a lie about what they ate for lunch, they will lie about it. And I was like, oh my God, really? And then over the course of the years, I began to see, they were late for meetings, and there was always something that probably wasn't true. I wasn't going to chase it down. Wasn't as elaborate as your grandmother died or something, but there was always an excuse that may or may not have been true. The person eventually got fired because they were having sex in the bathroom.
That old thing.
I guess you're going to lie about that. If you're doing that, which is pretty stupid, you'll probably lie about it. But, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. This society that we have in the West, not a perfect society, as if there ever has been one, but it's predicated on the idea that generally people are expected culturally to tell the truth about most things, certainly business things. I've told you, when I lived in the Middle East, I found out the hard way. Getting a commitment from someone who lives in some of these countries in the Middle East, even a handshake agreement, which would kind of seal the deal in the United States. You would have an expectation. If you shook hands on it, you articulated the agreement that in most cases you feel like that's a deal. And then you'd come back and sign the document. Heck, we'd sign documents and it didn't matter. And then if you took it to court, the courts in the Middle East, there's no way to put this nicely. If you were an infidel, like I was, or you were an infidel like some of the other Christians and occasionally kind of secret Jews who were doing work, forget it. You're just wasting your time going to court. You'd be better off just accepting that you're not going to get what you want and move on and eat the loss. Well, and that is the premise of what I think we're about to show you. And Americans, God bless America and the insulated world that we live in, and the nice perception created by Walt Disney World, and this It's a Small World ride where all the kids are like, it's a small world after all. And the Hallmark card perception we have of the rest of the world, where culture is about costumes and music and food. It's not about how people interact with each other. I want to go crazy when someone says everyone's the same all around the world. Hell no, they're not.
No.
And that's coming from me. 116 countries around the world over 30-some years, traveling around the world. Everybody's not the same. Yeah, they all have sex. They all have husbands or wives and kids, and they've got some religious belief. There are some commonalities about humans, or parallels. They're not necessarily commonalities, they're parallels. But people are different, and we are really naive and foolish, almost to the point of jeopardizing our own safety and lives if we don't objectively analyze the difference in these cultures. I'm not saying abuse people. I'm not saying have a bigoted Archie Bunker attitude about people. I'm saying you owe it to yourself right now, when we're making immigration decisions and cultural decisions, to look at the distinctions between our culture and what is normal here and what you see around the world.
Yep.
And it's going to be a problem. You want to play this clip?
Let's roll that beautiful bean footage.
Yeah. See, they're going to get sued for this. It's not Walt Disney. They shouldn't have put that in. That's stupid. Because Disney will sue you.
Yeah.
Hope they don't sue us. I don't like that.
Pay up or die, and they look you in the eye, knowing you believe the lie that inclusion was everybody's friend. the truth now we all know. That was the beginning of the end. You didn't fight back, you failed to resist, and now the country is under their fist. No sun, no fun, no sky. All the music now must die. No more thinking thoughts, Sharia council, schools and courts. Welcome to Britain under the brand new caliphate. You're no longer free. Cover your face, your hair, your feet. You're now enslaved in a British caliphate. Don't you love the British caliphate?
So yeah.
I mean, I would ask you, I'm sure some people will talk about that, the people are watching now and people who will talk about us showing that. Is that an exaggeration? Is that an unfair thing to bring up? And is that an exaggeration that unfairly attributes negative characteristics to a group of people who are, in our midst? I have to tell you, as someone who lived in the Middle East, and I was in some cities where if you went back through the libraries, and I was in the libraries because of the work I was doing, and you looked at the pictures of the women in particular in the 70s and early 80s, they were wearing Western clothes with Western haircuts, hairdos, and I'm not going to say they were wearing mini skirts, but it were Western clothes that were much more revealing than what would be acceptable under a more extreme Islamic view of the world. The radical Islamists took over those countries, maybe not with the king, but culturally they took over. And I was told, I didn't witness this personally, but I was told that those women were regularly abused in the street. The cultural arbiters would show up with sticks and hit them and say, your hair is not covered. What is wrong with you? You must cover your hair. Your dress is not long enough. And I can tell you, women are going to give up, and men will too. Look at what happened. I mean, this is changing subjects a little. Look at how easily everybody caved in COVID. I mean, most people in this country, you didn't have somebody personally beating you with a stick and saying we're going to kill your family or burn your house down. You just had the government threatening you, and everybody caved. Not everybody, but a lot of people caved. And I do think we have to look objectively at what is happening in other parts of the world, in Germany, in Belgium. Maybe we should have former Ambassador Howard Gutman on. I mean, of course, his perception will probably be different because he was an ambassador and he was living and working in a different world, perhaps, than the average person on the street. But I am told, and I have witnessed this in some places, in Paris and other parts of France, and in Spain when I've traveled overseas in the last couple of years, the culture is changing in Europe. Mm-hmm. And it is because of the mass importation of people who do not have that Christian tradition. And I don't like to impugn people. I'm not looking to be enemies with everybody. And I hope, if you know me personally, I can be judgmental, but I generally start out liking everybody. But I'm not stupid. And I see these cultural differences beginning to seep in. And you saw, Dan, during the campaign, I brought up Sharia law as it related to Ghazala Hashmi, the new lieutenant governor, the woman who beat me by 11 points. I mean, there's no nice way to put it. She won. But when I brought up Sharia law and how they kept touting, oh, she's going to be the first Muslim statewide leader in Virginia, and this is going to be so amazing for America. Well, no, wait a minute. If you start getting pressure from the Muslim population that you're a part of and the Islamic leaders as it relates to public policy in Virginia, is your commitment to the laws of Virginia or to your religious beliefs? And do you agree with some of the more extreme things that we could point out to within Islam? Or you renounce those things? And I was attacked for daring to bring up the issue. I think Objectively, that's an important conversation for us to have. John Kennedy had to answer that question about whether he would be subject to the rule of the Pope as a Catholic. Mitt Romney had to answer that question about whether he would submit to the leaders of the Mormon Church if he were elected president. Pat Robertson, when he ran for president, that was a big question. You're an evangelical Christian. Are you going to oppress gays? Are you going to see, as some people would claim, the theory is an evangelical reading of the Bible, that people of color are second-class citizens? Is that what you believe? How would you deal with women? Are you going to be a Bible believer, and it doesn't matter what the people of Virginia and of the United States say, or are you going to obey the concept of law that exists in Western civilization? And the thing that was so frustrating to me, and I think it's legitimate, is no one else would bring it up. Like, I called around and I said, are you going to ask her this question, or am I going to have to do it as the candidate? Because I know that it's an ugly question. It's not a nice question. It makes people mad. And everyone's like, I'm scared to ask that question. They're going to call me an Islamophobe and a racist. I was like, well, it's a legitimate question. Maybe you let Ghazala Hashmi explain herself and everybody feels good about it. Maybe. Or maybe she dodges the question, as she did.
Yep.
And you have questions like, well, no, wait a minute. What if we start to have Sharia law dictating family, interpersonal and family relations? Are the courts of Virginia going to honor the law of the Commonwealth of Virginia, or are you going to have judges start to say, no, we'll let the Sharia Council deal with this? And that is not made up. That is happening in Great Britain today. It's happening in other parts of the world. I think we should wrestle with that before we find ourselves.
Aren't there allegations that it's happening in parts of the Midwest already here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is, it's not being made up. It's not a racist trope that these legislators are saying, hold on a second, we've got to begin to clearly draw lines about this issue, because it's becoming an issue. And I just, you're going to call me whatever you want to call me. I just can't worry about it anymore. I want to save Virginia and America and Western culture. I think it is valuable. I think it is unique. I know that it has taken centuries to reach the place where we have fairness under the law for most people. We can debate the people who are on the perimeter here, but for most people, this is a great place to live. For most people, and we're about to give all of that up because we're scared to be called racist, or we're scared to ask a question and demand an answer. And somebody's got to be bold enough to do it. I guess it falls to me to do it. And as a gay man, I know people get mad when I keep bringing that up, but imagine my life working very diligently to try to convince my colleagues in the Republican Party, to convince my fellow parishioners within the Christian church that I still am very proud to be a Christian. I'm happy to be a Christian. I value that in my life. Doesn't mean I'm a perfect Christian, but I value that. And as someone who's a patriot, I consider myself to be a patriot. I want to live that way in America. I am being asked not to ask a question. I'm being told not to ask a question about what it's going to be like for me when I'm 70 years old or 80 years old, and the Islamic population is very significant, and the Ghazala Hashmi is not a one-off, but the Board of Supervisors is filled with people who are of the Islamic faith. The General Assembly is filled with people of the Islamic faith. Perhaps we have a governor who is a Muslim. No, I'm not willing to just assume that it's going to work out for me, because I've lived in parts of the world where people like me were murdered in the middle of the night, and they had tires filled with gasoline put around their head, and they were burned alive. So, no, I'm not willing to just hope that it all works out. I'm going to ask that uncomfortable question, and I really don't give a damn whether people are offended by it or not. It's a legitimate question. It's what we're seeing in other parts of the world, and we should not allow this to happen in our country because we're too timid and too weak and too passive to acknowledge the truth about the difference in cultures. It's not about costumes and music and food. It's about a lot more than that. And somebody has to raise it. This little cartoon gave us a chance to do that.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you, and obviously I've gone out on a limb on this show about a couple things regarding to this, but I stand by everything that I've said in that regard. This is not a culture that let's put it this way. This culture doesn't. It isn't just that this culture doesn't value freedom. This culture doesn't even value life. I mean, they've said that.
There's a problem here. There's a problem here.
You want life. We want death. That is a literal quote from their clerics.
Certainly, there's a percentage of the people, and I hate to say this. I think as the population grows, the percentage of people who are radicalized inevitably increases, and all it takes, candidly, I mean, I risk alienating our own people here who are evangelical Christians, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, and I tried to navigate this during the campaign. I understand evangelical Christians are probably never going to approve of me and my personal life and my relationship with Alonzo, and okay, you know what? I'm not going to fight with you over it. You believe, you do you believe you. I will even stand up for you and your church so that you can worship and live as you see fit, and you can exclude me from that. You can say, hey, we don't want you to be in our church. You can say, we're not going to have your wedding here at this church. That's okay. What you can't do, which I will stand up against, is use the government to hammer me and make me a second or third class citizen, or use it as an excuse to harm me as an individual, physically or otherwise. Now, that's different. So if I can make that statement about my own people with great respect, and believe me, I've spent more time thinking about this than most people have. I mean, that's why I was so annoyed on the campaign trail. These people would come up and act like they had spent put yourself in my shoes, 30-some years dealing with this issue. I promise you I've spent more time thinking about it in a practical sense than you have. If I can talk about this objectively and honestly and openly as it relates to my faith and the people of my faith and the concerns that I have with my people, then you should very much expect that I'm going to have the same conversation about people of another faith that, quite frankly, has demonstrated a real hostility towards people like me. And what's shocking is how many people attacked me during the campaign for being gay and being Republican. I mean, they couldn't believe it. But then they sit in the corner and they're too scared to talk about this issue. I mean, come on. Where are you? Why is the gay guy the only person with the guts in the society to open up the dialogue about this important issue? I've been doing it for a long time. And it's crazy to me. Last night when I sent this to you, Dan, I thought, how stupid is it? What kind of a society do we live in where it's a fake animated movie with a little song that I have to use to try to engage with people in the conversation?
Yeah, and I think a couple of people are confused. They think that Disney put this out. That Disney did not actually produce this. This is somebody.
We need to say that over and over again.
Disney did not make this. Somebody made it and attributed it to which probably wasn't smart for them. But yeah,
no, it was stupid. It was stupid. Yeah. And if we play it again, Dan, let's cut that part out.
Cut that out.
I'm not looking for any fights with any of the lawyers either. And since I know that it's not true, we need to be careful. That's one reason we put the disclaimer. But it is a legitimate issue to be concerned about. And there are a lot of people who are in Europe right now who are also bullied into silence, who walk out of their door and go, God, this isn't the same place that I grew up in. This is a very different. And I don't mean just people look different. That's not the issue. It's whether you feel safe engaging in normal activity and behavior in your own neighborhood. And I mean, it's not even really, neighborhoods change. I guess a bunch of Italians show up and then the Italians vote for the Italians. And their pasta parties and their their Italian restaurants on the corner instead of whatever was there before. That's different. That's culture too, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fundamental principles of a free society where you can live as you see fit. And I will tell you, if this were the crazy thing is, I have to deal with this with my Christian friends, and I have to deal with it with my gay friends, some of whom have decided they hate me, even though I'm telling them the truth. They know that if this were, what was the name of the church that was so hostile?
Westboro?
Westboro. If this were a
Westboro
Baptist Church affiliate that was opening in your neighborhood and you were a gay guy, let's say in San Francisco or in DuPont Circle in Washington, I promise you these guys would be off the charts angry. They'd be protesting. They would be, doing everything they could to stop the zoning so that the Westboro Baptist Church couldn't be there, because they think, I think correctly, the Westboro Baptist Church isn't about live and let live. They're going to harass you and make your life miserable. So if you have that concern about the Westboro Baptist Church, which I think is a legitimate concern, I'm here to tell you, you should be paying close attention to other people of whatever faith they are and whether they will let you live your life as you see fit. And boy, they hate me for telling them the truth.
Westboro ain't got nothing on Islamic fundamentalists.
No.
That is child's play compared
to what we could.
Oh my!
I mean, really,
come on, folks.
If you were to write a essay, an informed essay, not just an emotional, bombastic essay, an informed essay of where we could be in the United States in, let's say, 30 years. 30 years. There is a version of that. If we surrender the Judeo-Christian traditions and values to other people, that you won't even know you're in America anymore. And I think we need to wrestle with that question honestly and openly. And we need to demand that anyone who is here subjugates themselves to Western tradition, and they're not going to try to overtake us.
At least the enlightenment oriented values. Yeah, I mean, this is we are based in the values of the Enlightenment that believe in individual, or at least espouse
individual freedom,
individual liberty,
freedom of expression.
Freedom of conscience, the whole thing. Yeah,
objective truth. That's one of the reasons I'm so anti-trans, is that the trans movement, as it's being promoted today, is not about objective truth. They are demanding that you participate in something that's a factual lie. I'll be nice to you if you wear feminine clothes and you're a feminine guy. Okay, I mean, I don't have anything against you.
Yeah, you do
you. Do you. I mean, you might not be my best friend. We might not, hang out together, but okay. I'm not trying to make your life miserable. But what I won't participate in is a validation that you have suddenly, because you changed your mind and you want to be the opposite sex, that suddenly you have become.
Yeah, the whole Piers Morgan, I'm a black lesbian now. Yeah.
Even if you've gotten hormones or you've had a surgery. No, I think that's kind of crazy and extreme, and I'm honest enough to tell you, I think that's kind of crazy and extreme. But still, you do you, but don't expect me to participate in a lie. And we're losing that concept of objective truth in America, which I guess this is a good way to wrap up the show, because it takes us back to what we started with in the first 20 minutes, which is, are we conditioning our minds to put our own personal opinions aside and analyze things with objectivity and try to look at things from a bunch of different perspectives before we issue a directive or before we talk about something? And it's certainly with the media, I think much of that analysis, that ability to analyze things objectively, is out the window, because it's all point of view journalism. And that's coming from somebody who I acknowledge I'm a partisan. I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative. I do know these positions very well, but I try to think when I When I hear Abigail Spanberger talking, when I hear Ghazala Hashmi talking, even Jay Jones, who talked too much and said some things that are really disturbing, I'm trying to objectively analyze it, not just have a reflexive political answer.
Well,
I can
heck,
do that, but you got to be able to do both.
I'd love to get the news people out of the evaluation business altogether. I mean,
Just report the facts.
Just report, journalize, journal what's happening. Just tell us, just report. And what was the old Fox News? I love the old Fox News motto.
We report.
You decide.
Yeah.
That's what these places should do. Report. We'll handle the deciding part. We'll handle the evaluation part. Just report. Just report it.
When
pre-objectivity.
you see, like ABC News. Remember, I worked for an ABC affiliate here in Richmond.
Yeah.
And one of the things that used to really annoy me was the promotional material that you would see about ABC News, about we'll put it in perspective. We'll explain why this is important for you. And I thought, I really am not interested in that.
No,
Just tell me what the president said.
Right.
Tell me tell me what Abigail Spanberger said.
Right.
Be honest about it, and then I will figure it out. I don't need some left-wing wacko who went to the same school as the left-wing wacko that's next to them, who goes to the same cocktail parties, and they all validate each other, and no one ever is allowed to question each other. I don't need you putting it in perspective for me. I'm smart enough to put it in perspective myself if you'll just do the reporting and give me the facts.
Right. By the way, John, that was how President Trump had a really good night last night. Kind of by accident, I stumbled upon the CBS roundtable reaction to the speech. Margaret Brennan's head looked like it was about to explode. She was so upset. It's like, I guess President Trump did have a good night.
Look, if you're a traditionalist, the Trump speech the other night was not a traditional, formal. I mean, I guess you could debate whether it was dignified. It was a Trump speech, and he's just a different leader. Yeah. And I, when people are berserk about that, I'm like, Trump is different. I acknowledge that, but how do you think we got here? We got here because, like George W. Bush, who I didn't agree with on everything, he tried, I think, very diligently to conduct himself in the traditional presidential way. And you refused to allow him to do that. You mocked, ridiculed, and tried to destroy him way beyond anything I had ever seen in my lifetime, especially with the advent of social media. And, the guy couldn't even open a door. If he pushed and it was a pull door, suddenly nothing he said in the press conference, even if it meant the life or death of people, that didn't matter anymore. It was all just this kind of snarky attitude designed to humiliate and diminish him as a leader, even as he tried to present himself as a dignified presidential leader. And so, hey, it shouldn't surprise you that this is what we get from Trump, because Trump doesn't give a damn about any of that stuff. He's going to do what he wants to do, and to hell with you.
And the shocking thing to me, I mean, from a strictly, I don't know how even to say this. I'm not talking about ideologically, but just in terms of how they play the game. The Democrats are usually pretty shrewd at how they play the game. I think Republicans. Yeah, Republicans are always sort of complaining like, God, why can't we get our act together like the Democrats seem to with regard to just circling the wagons and everything else that they do, just in terms of the logistics and stuff. But man, do they have their instincts with President Trump been so wrong for 10 years. They could have taken the wind out of his sails a couple nights ago if they just applauded.
To go along with him.
If they just applaud, just stand up and applaud. He can't call you out if you don't let him call you out.
Yeah, good point.
And I mean,
good point.
It's
why, Dan, when I would go to things with Obama, because remember, I was working in D.C. when Bush was president, Obama was president. When president, I was in the White House, and Barack Obama would walk right by me. I stood up. I mean, I wasn't one of these people, like John McGuire trying to get a selfie or shake hands with him. I stood up. I tried to be dignified and respectful of the office, even though I disagreed with a lot of the things he was doing. All of that is lost. Look at the Kennedy Center. These radical whack jobs in the arts community have no dignity, and yet they're complaining about Trump. You can't even go to an event at the Kennedy Center where they're honoring people who you like, bands that you like, artists that you like, singers that you like. You are so crazy and so disrespectful and so radicalized, you can't go in a tuxedo and an evening gown and stand and just be respectful for yourself and for the people around you, much less the president. You refuse to do that. I mean, how do we function in society if we allow these people to behave that way?
In sports, certain sport teams just have other sport teams' number. And gosh, Trump just has these people's number. He just knows how to make them look silly. And
what would the sports example?
Well, I'm just, as a Steelers fan, the Patriots, we just always lose to the Patriots. It feels like there's just nothing we can do. It's like, all right, we're playing. Oh, it's gonna be.
You mean about the final score, or?
Well, just it's like, it doesn't really matter. Oh, they're 5 games under 500 this year. Doesn't matter. They're still gonna find a way to beat us. But it's just like that, and just some teams just have other teams' numbers, and it's like Trump just has these people's number. It was remarkable to watch the other night how easily they were letting him play them like a violin. It was like, golly day. I mean, just stand up and applaud, and you'll take his power away from him. And they don't know how to do it.
American citizens.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't, but it's just golly day, people. It's not. This is not rocket science.
It was illustrative of their real beliefs. I mean, the awful thing is, I think that's what they really believe. I'm not.
It absolutely is.
I'm not
it
here
absolutely
to look
is.
out for the American people. I'm here to look out for illegal immigrants.
No. I wish you'd said stand up if you love the American flag. They probably would have sat on their hands then too.
Yeah, good point.
I mean, I think he should have just gone for broke. It's like,
good point. Yeah. All right. Well, I see that it's noon.
Yeah.
And we probably need to go. But
true.
Listen, I want to give away another pair of tickets to the Virginia Forum. It's tomorrow night, so we're right up on this thing. Send me a note at thereidrevolution@gmail.com. Put tickets in the highlight in the subject line. Producer Dan will be back in touch with you. We will add your name to the list so that you can go to the VIP little reception. I mean, it's not a catered dinner or anything, but a little reception. And then you can go hear Jamie Franklin, who is building a following of young women who are not going to go with the left on these important issues that we're facing. Jamie Franklin on stage for the Virginia Forum tomorrow night, and then I'll have a chance to interview her. So, and if you don't get the tickets today, if you don't win the tickets, you can buy them at thevirginiacouncil.org, thevirginiacouncil.org, and we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. I'll probably give away a couple of more pairs tomorrow on the program as well. But I hope I'll see you at the Glen Allen Cultural Arts Center. And I should mention that we're still voting in the Style Best of Richmond contest. This is the nominating phase. And if you can find a podcast and nominate the John Reid, the Reid Revolution broadcast or podcast, that would really be great. Our friend Jeff Katz, who's still over at WRVA doing the evening show from 3 to 6. Jeff is in the running, and I think he's likely to win this for Best Radio Show. So I would like to ask you to contemplate nominating Jeff Katz for Best Radio Show. Now he and I don't have to battle it out. We have different categories, so hopefully we can both win our respective categories. And I appreciate all of you who have voted. You can vote every day until Saturday. Saturday is when this nominating thing cuts off. And the podcast section is the arts and culture section. Good point, producer Dan. And hold on, what else did I want to mention? Follow us on X. You know, a lot of you probably have apps on your phone from a bunch of different social media outlets, but we have tried to make this program and the little clips that we put out of the different interviews. If you don't have 2 hours to sit with us, I don't blame you. Although you can just keep it up on your computer and listen if that's what you want to do, like you used to do with the radio. If you follow us on X, on Facebook, of course, we have 2 pages, and I'm trying to get people to migrate to the second page, not just the first page. People have been so generous with being on the first page, which was the one that I had when I was running for lieutenant governor. Now we have the Reid Revolution with John Reid and the Reid Revolution. If you're willing to like both of them and follow both of them, that really helps me so that we don't get deplatformed. And we're on just about every social media outlet, Apple and Spotify, YouTube. give me a thumbs up if you would please, so that we can keep this thing going. And next month, we'll have a couple of advertisers to share with you. All right, we ran a little bit long, just an hour and 4 minutes. Who cares? It's a podcast. It's a podcast broadcast. I'll see you tomorrow morning on the Reid Revolution.
These people are crazy. I'm telling you, they're crazy.